You already know that feeling. That tight chest, that sick stomach, that moment right before you have to face someone after things went wrong. You rehearse what you're going to say in your head about 100 times, and somehow every version ends in disaster. You lie awake at night replaying the argument over and over, thinking about what you should have said, what you should have done differently, wondering if the relationship is even salvageable at this point. And the worst part is, you actually care. You care deeply. This is not about someone you can just walk away from. This is someone who matters to you. A partner, a friend, a family member, someone you built something real with. And now there is this wall between you two, and every day that wall gets a little thicker, a little harder to break through. Here is the truth that nobody talks about. Most people never learn how to actually resolve conflict. They learn how to survive it. They learn how to go quiet until things cool down, or blow up until the other person backs off, or apologize just to stop the pain without anything actually changing. And then 3 weeks later, the same fight happens again. Different words, same wound. That cycle is exhausting. And if you have been in it long enough, you start to wonder if you are just fundamentally bad at relationships, if something is broken inside you that cannot be fixed. I need you to hear this right now. Nothing is broken. You were just never taught the real skills. Studies on relationship repair show that the average couple waits over 6 years before addressing serious recurring conflicts. 6 years of damage building up. 6 years of distance growing. By the time most people try to fix things, the emotional debt is so heavy that it takes extraordinary effort just to get back to neutral. But here is what the research also shows. Relationships that successfully navigate conflict come out significantly stronger than relationships that never faced serious tension at all. The conflict itself is not the enemy. The unresolved conflict is. Now, before we go deeper, if you are someone who is serious about transforming not just how you handle conflict, but your entire ability to connect, communicate, and build the kind of relationships that actually last, there is a program linked in the video description below. People who apply what is in that program report changes in their relationships within days, not months. But more on that in a moment. Right now, let us get into the actual work. Here is what happens inside your body during a conflict that most people do not realize. When tension rises, your nervous system shifts into survival mode. Your heart rate spikes, your ability to think clearly drops by a measurable amount, and your brain literally starts processing the other person as a threat rather than a partner. This is not a character flaw. This is biology. And the other person is going through the exact same thing. Two brains, both in threat mode, both convinced the other one is the problem. No wonder these conversations go nowhere. The very first skill you need, and almost nobody does this, is what I call the 120-second reset. When you feel that spike of heat rising in your chest during a conflict, you have to pause the conversation for just 2 minutes, not to walk away, not to shut down, just to breathe. Tell the other person, I want to keep talking about this, I just need 2 minutes to think clearly. That single move, that 2 minutes, changes the entire trajectory of what comes next. Because now you are talking to each other instead of at each other. Think about a time when an argument spiraled completely out of control, when things got said that could not be unsaid. Now think about how long that argument lasted before it hit that point of no return. For most people, it is under 4 minutes. 4 minutes of unchecked reactive emotion, and suddenly you are repairing damage that takes weeks to heal. 2 minutes of intentional pause would have changed everything. But pausing is only the beginning. Here is where it gets really interesting. Most people believe that conflicts are about the thing you are fighting about. The dishes, the money, the time spent apart, the words that were said. But those things are almost never the actual conflict. They are symptoms. The real conflict is almost always about one of 3 things: feeling unseen, feeling disrespected, or feeling unsafe. When you understand that, everything shifts. Because now, instead of defending yourself against their argument about the dishes, you can ask yourself, what are they actually feeling right now? What need is not being met? And when you approach the conversation from that angle, when you say something like, I can see that this really upset you and I want to understand why, the other person's entire body language changes. The defensiveness drops, the walls come down, not because you agreed with them, but because you made them feel seen. And that is the fastest shortcut to resolution that exists. Now here is a hard truth, and I want you to really sit with this one. 90% of the time, when you think the other person is being completely unreasonable, you are missing something. There is a piece of their experience that you have not fully understood yet. And the moment you find that missing piece, the whole picture changes. This does not mean you are wrong and they are right. It means both of you are carrying incomplete information, and the conflict exists in that gap. People who have applied this understanding consistently report that their conflicts shorten from hours to minutes, because instead of spending 4 hours defending positions, they spend 20 minutes actually understanding each other. Think about what you could do with those hours back. Think about the emotional energy you could redirect toward actually building something beautiful with that person, instead of tearing each other apart trying to be right. Now let us talk about the most important conversation you will ever have after a conflict. The repair conversation. Most people skip this entirely. They wait for things to feel normal again, assume the issue is resolved because nobody is yelling anymore, and move on. And that is exactly how resentment gets built, layer by layer, quiet conversation by quiet conversation. Until one day someone explodes and the other person has no idea where it came from. Except it did not come from nowhere. It came from every unresolved moment that was swept under the rug. The repair conversation has a specific structure that actually works. It starts with one sentence, just one. And that sentence is not an apology. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but hear me out. Apologies, especially when they come too quickly, feel like the person just wants to end the discomfort. They feel hollow. What actually heals the relationship is acknowledgement. The sentence that starts repair is this: I think I understand now why that hurt you, and I want you to know I actually get it. That sentence does three things simultaneously. It validates their experience. It signals that you thought about them, not just yourself. And it opens the door for them to actually hear you when it is your turn to speak. After that, the conversation flows differently. The walls are already starting to come down before you have even addressed the main issue. Here is something remarkable that consistently shows up in relationships that make it through serious conflict. Both people describe the period after the conflict, the period of repair, as some of the most intimate time in their entire relationship. Because something happens when two people are willing to stay in the difficulty together. When neither one runs, when neither one shuts down completely. When both people decide this relationship is worth fighting for instead of fighting against each other. That is when real depth gets built. That is when the bond goes from surface level to something that can weather anything. But let me be really direct with you right now. If you are waiting to feel ready to have these conversations, you will be waiting forever. Readiness does not come before action in this situation. Readiness comes because of action. The conversation is uncomfortable, and then you have it, and something inside you shifts. You realize you are more capable of this than you thought. You realize the other person is more willing to hear you than you expected. But that realization only comes on the other side of the conversation, never before it. Here is one more thing that the most connected couples, the most solid friendships, the most resilient families all have in common. They have what I call a conflict language, a shared understanding of how they navigate hard moments together. They have conversations about the conversations. They talk about how they want to handle things when things get hard before things get hard. And because of that, when conflict does arise, it does not feel like the end of something. It feels like a test they have already prepared for together. Most people spend more time planning a dinner reservation than they spend intentionally building the communication framework for the most important relationships in their life. And then they wonder why those relationships eventually crack under pressure. You deserve relationships that do not just survive the hard moments. You deserve relationships that are fundamentally transformed by them. You deserve to be the person in the room who knows how to turn tension into understanding, who knows how to hold space for someone who is hurting while also being honest about your own experience, who knows how to rebuild something even stronger from the pieces of what broke. And that is exactly what is waiting for you. Everything we talked about today is just the surface. The program in the description below goes layers deeper into every single one of these skills. The people who go through it do not just have better conflict resolution, they describe entire relationship transformations happening within the first week. But this is not for everyone. If you are comfortable with things the way they are, if you are okay with the same patterns repeating, this is not for you. But if something in you is done tolerating relationships that are not living up to what they could be, if you are finally ready to become someone who can navigate any difficult conversation with confidence and come out with a deeper connection than you had before, the link is in the description. Go there now. The transformation you've been putting off starts with one decision today.